Hello and welcome to episode 9 of the First4LCFC podcast with myself, Christian. And tonight I'm joined with Austin over in America and Edbert, who hasn't featured on the podcast in a few weeks, but we've managed to get him on. We've fit ourselves around his busy schedule. So, Ed and Austin, how are you both?
I'm very good, thank you. And I appreciate your flexibility in these tough times to get me on. Have also listened to most of them. So good to have my input again because there'll be some more sane speaking now.
I'm not going to read into that. And Austin, how are you on what tonight is a big night in America, obviously with the elections, but we won't talk about that because there's no need. But how are you in general?
Doing well. Glad we're back to 5 hours apart instead of 4.
Yeah, absolute nightmare for you. I can't get over that you're waiting there patiently for an hour. I didn't even send a message saying where are you, but I hope you entertained yourself nonetheless. I've missed you. I've missed your noises, as I'm sure our listeners have. Ed has a mild form of Tourette's, it seems, in these instances. But anyway, we look back. It's been, again, what we'll have to get used to is 2 games in a week. Let's start with, obviously, Athens away last Thursday. It's a match that it's easy to forget about. But Austin, what can we take from that performance overall? Obviously a win, but what did we take from that?
Just a professional performance. It wasn't the best, like we said. But we got the job done, which is what we did. Christian Fuchs had a really good game that game. So did Wesley Fofana, and that's just good to see. We're obviously not at full strength, and tough trip all the way to Greece after a tough game against Arsenal, and the fact that we can go there, do a job, hang on, and then come back with 3 points in the group. That's always good.
Well, yeah, I think it's like you say, it's a relatively easy game to summarise. I mean, for me, I'm in agreement with you. We were under pressure at the start of the first half, and obviously in periods of the second half. So it's impressive that we didn't let our heads drop. But Ed, have you got anything you can possibly add to that game? I mean, the pitch wasn't great, but did you feel it interrupted our rhythm at all?
I don't really have much to add now. I think the game was a bit of a drab affair, not one for the spectators, which was fortunate given no one was there. It was a boring match. I don't think anyone played particularly amazing. But with that being said, an away win in Europe and 2 out of 2, you can, and we may touch upon this idea later, but you can only really beat what's in front of you. And I think we made it a little bit difficult for ourselves after they scored and brought them back into the game. But no, if you offered me 2-1 at kickoff, then I take it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think we're all in agreement that is literally Athens summarised. We've gone away from home. I think it would have been a totally different fixture potentially with what would have been a very lively crowd if we're judging Greek atmosphere of old. But ultimately, we went there, got the job done, flew back. Obviously, had enough rest and got into Leeds. What is yesterday now? So let's look at Leeds. A 4-1 emphatic victory. I think I did a preview for a Leeds blog saying I expected a cagey affair. And I think I put 1-0 in it. So it goes to show that it wasn't necessarily correct in that sense. But, I mean, Austin, let's start talking about we can't stop scoring away from home, it seems, in the Premier League. So what or who do you put that down to?
I think, it's tough, but one big thing is obviously Rodgers, at least for the first half, had a really good plan on what we were going to do, and that instead of going through them, we we're just going to go over them, and that was a way, and especially the likes of Vardy. I mean, how good was he that game? And obviously when Chango came on and Albrighton had a say in that second goal, Barnes was really good that game. I mean, it's just good to see all of our kind of pieces clicking together, which especially against Leeds and how tough they can really be to play. I mean, you really have to go out there and and show up and be ready to play. And like I think you told me, it's like it won't be good if we give up a goal early. Then our whole plan's going to go by the wayside. But obviously, a goal in the third minute for us really helped us. And yeah, the last 20 minutes or the first 20 minutes of the second half were not good at all. But weathered the storm, got lucky on the ball that hit the corner of the post, but got the job done, 3 points, and move on.
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head in saying that if we did go behind, as we did discuss before the match, it could have been a different story. And it ultimately, 30 seconds before we scored, Bamford missed probably the easiest chance he's probably had all year, and probably what we're used to seeing from him even in the Championship last year. But Ed, again, I was speaking to you before the game, and you weren't fully convinced in how Rodgers had set up. So, I mean, obviously it's easy to look back and think, yeah, it was the right decision to make. But, what were your thoughts at the time in regards to his team selection?
I thought it was a bit embarrassing more than anything. Like, I will tell the full story and explain. Obviously, it was the right thing to do in hindsight. Easier said than done. But at the start, I was thinking, we've got a bit of a hodgepodge team for a start because half the players are injured, which obviously isn't our fault. But it just looked like such a defensive side against a newly promoted team. I know Leeds have got quite a few plaudits this year, but I've never watched them and thought, oh, they're really good. They're gonna be a threat if we play at our best. And I guess the thing is, we've probably just got used to playing better, prettier, nicer looking football over the last couple of years, and it's just become the norm that we're going to go to places like this against teams which aren't as good as us if we play our proper game and pass them off the park, dominate the game, and just win a good footballing match. Evidently, you don't need to do that to win a game, and we've just won 4-1 against Leeds. I'm not complaining now. I've got egg on my face more than anything.
Well, no, I mean, yeah, obviously it's easy to look back. I don't know, for me, it just seemed like it was too easy. Like, on another night or another day, those chances obviously wouldn't have appeared. But it just seems like we had four. Well, obviously, one of them was a penalty, but we had four proper chances, made the most of it. The weather wasn't great. I'm sure people are going to be contributing a bit to that. But ultimately, I just didn't feel like Leeds, they didn't really portray themselves that well. Because on paper, technically speaking, we've got the better team. But for me, I don't know. Like, obviously, you take a 4-1 win, but I think Leeds did make it easy. And then when they started getting their foot on the ball at the start of the second half, we were tested. But again, you've got to take the positive from that in the fact that we didn't totally fold. Yes, they hit the woodwork, and then if it's 2-2, it's a different game again. But we're not here to focus on necessarily the negatives.
Well, I'll say one more negative point, if I'm allowed to butt in. It wasn't sort of just Leeds that I don't think were doing that much. If you actually think about our goals, one was a pen, which needed VAR to help, whether you agree with the decision or not, it's up to you. One was their awful defending, with the first one was a bit of a joke, well took though. And the other one was, the third that I can think of was a tap in after the keeper parried the ball to one of our players rather than away from harm. And I can't remember what the other one was. The breakaway.
Yeah, that was
that was a really nice pass. Yeah, so I'll give credit, but it was sort of like a bit of old school Leicester from a few years ago. That what the counter attacks were our biggest threat, and I guess we've proven there's literally nothing stopping you from doing that and getting great results. We won the bloody league. But we're sort of got used to seeing something else, and it was a bit of a surprise how we lined up and how we played. But I don't think many Leicester fans would have turned down a 4-1 win at kickoff.
Well, no, notoriously it's at Ellen Road, whether it be in the Premier League or in any other division we've met, has been a tricky place for us to go. Last time we won there in the Premier League was, I think, 1998 with Tony Cottee bagging the winner on that day. But nonetheless, for me, players we have to focus on in a positive light was the link up between Barnes and Vardy. I think this is the first, in my opinion at least, the first proper glimpse we've seen of potentially Barnes actually working really well through the middle and potentially, striking up a partnership with Vardy, but ultimately him being his sort of maybe long-term replacement. And ultimately, what better way from learning from a Premier League legend, if you like, in Jamie Vardy than training with him every day? So what are your thoughts on that, Austin? It is Harvey Barnes potentially now the obvious, candidate to replace Vardy long-term.
I mean, I think as of right now, he is. But if it was me, I'd love him to keep him on the left and us get another striker to bring in for Vardy. But if you're looking at our squad right now, because I think it's obvious now. I don't think Kelechi is really going to fit into that, barring an absolute, coming out party from him. But he's just not getting games at all anymore. And you saw that when we started with Barnes up front instead of Kelechi, and that just blows your mind how our second choice striker falls behind our left winger, who he had a really good game yesterday, but at least against Athens, he was not the best through the middle.
Well, you're not wrong there. I think the key word we probably need to allude to is dynamism, isn't it? He's nowhere near dynamic enough, in my opinion. Kelechi, he's like, I don't know. I won't even know how to describe him as a striker. Like, does he particularly hold play up? I honestly don't know. His finishing really isn't that great at the moment. I think obviously he made a reputation for himself at City as an impact sub, probably scoring in and around the 6-yard box, but we've honestly not seen that, have we? But I don't know. I mean, Ed, do you see any way back in for Iheanacho, or is it a case that we might have to recruit externally, or is it ultimately down to Barnes now to really step up to the plate?
Well, I certainly think he's better than another striker we have in the squad, or two strikers we have in the squad. However, to go back to your point about Vardy replacement, I'm not having it. Sorry, I think they'd work well together, but I see Barnes as the guy just off Vardy, as he is now, or off any other striker. I don't see him as being the front player, the focal point of any attack. Issue with that for Kelechi and Iheanacho, I think, is that that's also where he is at his best. He's the link-up man. If you're
going to describe him as anything, link-up man, but he's not. You can't picture him. Well, I don't remember him really like featuring in like a really good counter attack. Like just looking back at the goal where obviously Vardy played Barnes in, like the amount of running Barnes did, or even the speed he did to make up that ground. You just can't picture Iheanacho doing that. So,
I think Iheanacho last season did very well. He stepped up better than we've seen him before, and the issue here is we have got several players. If we want to play two up front, and it worked very well with good promising signs here from Vardy and Barnes, the issue is we have Barnes, Iheanacho and Perez, and maybe even Maddison, who can all play in that man just off. Maybe some of the other wingers can as well. But the only other player who you'd say confidently is the main man up front is Slimani, and he is just, from what we've seen when he's come back, I'd rather not, thanks.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll hold my hands up and I'd say, obviously I've been banging the drum for him to get back into the team, and ultimately he came on for a little bit a couple of weeks ago, but he's not been anywhere to be seen since then. But again, he's not dynamic. He's more of a sort of an actual target man. But what excites me about Barnes and Vardy is the fact that they're both pacey players. If Barnes works on his finishing a bit more, they share very similar traits. But only time will tell, I guess, in regards to that. But another exciting, or at least glimmer of excitement we've seen is Under and Vardy, isn't it? I mean, regardless of the goal yesterday, which in my opinion, and I think we all agree, was a deliberate chip. For me, just purely based on his foot placement, his body isn't even facing goal, but I think it was a chip. But regardless of that second pass that he played through, just splitting the defence open, where Vardy almost had too much time and ultimately squandered his one-on-one. Not to mention the assist he got against Arsenal. Like just how good can Under be, Austin? I know you're a big fan of his, so he's showing real promising glimmers, isn't he?
I mean, he's definitely a guy that I think is going to really factor in our team. And I mean, we don't really know where he's going to be at starting wise. Obviously, he got to start against Athens, but I mean, he's a direct player, which is something that we've been really looking out for. You see how Barnes has really played well lately, and he's that direct sort of player. So if we can mimic that on the other side, I mean, he had 2 huge assists for us. Like we're saying, obviously he had the assist against Arsenal that won us the game, and he had this assist against Leeds that basically got the 3 points. I mean, he's coming on as a sub in big situations, and he's delivering big time assists to Jamie Vardy to win us games.
Well, I mean, if you look at that potential front four, if you like, so you got Vardy obviously as a talisman, then you got Barnes, Maddison, and Under in what could arguably be like a strongest starting lineup. So for me, that's fantastic balance, isn't it? You've got that sort of arrowhead of pace and just flair, but then you've got Maddison in behind with potentially someone like Tielemans and Didi or Mendy, which is a debate we'll come on to very soon. That seems like a really well balanced sort of attacking line, and then not to mention the defence as well. So, Ed, are you in agreement that is potentially the best front four we could field?
Possibly. I don't want to get too excited about him yet. He has come on and done had some good input, created some goals, which is, needless to say, an excellent start. But we need to see him play in 90 minutes in the Prem and see what he can do against the big boys. But promising start. I guess the one thing I'd say about is that the best front four. I think to actually really reflect on that, you probably need to think who's the best back four when we've got our full team back as well. Like if you're wanting to play 2 wingers and an attacking mid, like is that then going to stifle on with the wing backs that we've got now? When Pereira is back, Castagna, are they going to be able to bomb forward as much if we've already got all these other people further up the field? So maybe we'll stick with the 2 up top and no wingers when they're back, and we'll play more of a 5 at the back. Who knows? But it's certainly good that we've got these options now.
Well,
flexible squad when fit.
I mean, again, I'm going to have to hold my hands up and say, like, at the end of the window, I'll say, no, we're 1 or 2 players short in key positions. But now, again, touch wood, and this is talking about injuries in the squad. It just seems like we've found a really healthy sort of squad depth. Like, even looking at players like Luke Thomas, who's coming up, and he just looks more than competent. Yes, again, he's not maybe been tested against a high quality opposition, but nonetheless, we can't say, can we, Austin, that we've been found out because of a lack of squad depth yet? Can we?
No, definitely not on squad depth. I mean, I think obviously our biggest loss was West Ham, but I don't think that had to do with our squad depth. And I mean, obviously the problem is, and I hate to be this pessimistic, but if we have another injury, then we might have a problem. But the fact that we still have players that we're throwing out there and that we're very confident with is really shows you players stepping up, like especially Christian Fuchs. Like what we thought with Fuchs is like he's there to kind of help Castagna break in and help Luke Thomas come up, but he's going out and putting up performances. Like there's not a lot of people expecting him to play kind of as well as he has.
I think it's
And
worth noting at this point. Can we all remember that where he pulled out that slide tackle on Luke Ayling yesterday? Made him look a bit of a clown, didn't he? But I mean, it's that sort of experience, isn't it? Like a lot of younger players might leave their foot in there, give that penalty away, but he's got that nous about him, hasn't he, Austin?
yeah. I mean, and we were talking about Luke Thomas. Like, he's almost a perfect guy for Luke Thomas and for our squad. He's a guy who can play that left side center back if we do 3 center backs, and he's, especially if we want to play over the top. I mean, that's what he made his name on, and 15-16 is playing over the top, and it's just really good we have all this depth, and like Ed was saying, we have multiple ways of playing right now, and you feel confident in kind of these multiple ways. So, and then it's like, when we get healthy, what are we going to do?
Well, that's what I mean. I mean, there's worse problems to have, let's face it. But, we've got players like Fuchs, Albrighton, Wes Morgan less so in the point I'm trying to make, but Schmeichel as well. These players who haven't been necessarily raised on this playing out from the back sort of mantra. So, yeah, it was Fuchs who played Barnes in over the top yesterday, wasn't it? So, yeah, I think that it's a healthy balance, and also from that mentoring point of view, that say Wes Morgan doesn't get offered another contract at the end of this year, or Fuchs, you'd like to see them stay in and around in some sort of coaching vicinity, hopefully at the club. But obviously, we'll get to that when it happens. But ultimately, something I want to praise Rodgers for is his squad rotation, because obviously when you leave players like Maddison out in particular, under maybe not so much because obviously it's not established, but he's mindful of the fact that Maddison is returning from injury. He did play, what was it, 60, 65 minutes or so in Athens. So again, myself, putting my hands up again, I might as well just leave him up all podcast. I've criticised Rodgers for his lack of flexibility or his lack of plan B, but ultimately he's showcasing some sort of tactical nous in terms of leaving players out and obviously balancing that squad with the Europa League, isn't he, already, Ed? So is it sustainable that this sort of model remains throughout the season, or is it just a case that we're not really coming up against good teams in the Europa League, so we can sort of afford to maybe fiddle around with it, if you like?
Well, yes, naturally, if you're going to rotate, you're much more comfortable in doing so if you are doing it against weaker sides. Yeah, I think it's just the nature of the beast. Like, you got more games, you got to rotate more. Also,
I mean, ultimately, looking at Rodgers, the two big criticisms any neutral fan could put him is that he maybe suffered squad burnout at Liverpool when they failed to win the title. What was that, 14-15 was it? And also obviously in Leicester last season, we ultimately crumbled and everyone was on his back for that. So come on, third time lucky. Is this the season that he finally realises, I have to be very wise with more games on the schedule this year as well? Is this the season he really does have to wise up for that?
I think we've got to the point where we can't actually have many more injuries. I think Austin touched on that, didn't he? We are okay just now. If we lose many more players, I do not think we will be okay. Like, yes, we played well against Leeds, don't get me wrong, but we also had 3 fullbacks on the pitch at once, of which only one of them played fullback. We had a winger at right back. One of our centre backs has played like 5 games in English football. We're okay now, but we're missing so many key players. We can't afford many others. So maybe it's just trying to avoid those situations. That, if we had our first 11 out, our 5 most defensive outfield players are all currently injured. That's half the team.
Well, yeah, when you put it like that, and the stats are alarming. Like we've got no right to be sort of getting the results we're getting, really, but somehow we are doing it. Which for me, you have to accredit to sort of squad management and like the fact that these players who are potentially fringe players are stepping up and putting in performances, which ultimately suggests that they must be happy being used in this sort of rotation system, if you like, surely.
Well, yeah, I think at the end of the day, everyone's sort of pulling together now. I reckon they're not idiots. They're well aware we're short on players. Everyone's going to get a run out. Everyone knows that if they don't play in the Prem, they'll be playing 4 days later. So I think there's maybe a bit more open to rotation now because they know they can't play every game. If they miss this one, they'll probably play the next one anyway.
Okay. Well, it seems like an apt time for me to bring in the hot topic debate. I wish I had a little jingle to play at this point, but obviously earlier on Twitter, I just put a poll up saying upon the return of Wilfred and Ndidi, who starts? So you've got Ndidi, Mendy, who are both defensive-minded players. So let's just chuck it out there. So Austin, first of all, we've got a fully fit 2 players. Mendy's been playing consistently, and Ndidi's coming out of the cold. How do you manage this situation?
Well, I mean, we're probably looking at Ndidi coming back around December, I believe. I mean, and then I know you said this in the last pod. It's like the good thing is with the time he comes back is that's going to be that busy Christmas period when we have all those games. So I think we're like, no matter if they were both healthy, I think we're going to have to rotate them anyway. So that's a good thing that we can do. And at least how we have that December period is that we can just rotate both and really not lose much. Now, I mean, and then obviously, depending on how each one of them plays, may determine how they play, like who plays what in January and February. But I mean, if you're saying like we just have one game a week, I think I would go Ndidi. I think I'll go Ndidi. I mean, it's so tough because Mendy's been so good, and I mean, Ndidi is obviously one of the world's best CDMs. So I mean, it's like we've been,
thing, isn't it? Are we as Leicester fans like unaware? Well, not unaware. I mean, it's a sort of callous way of putting it, but like, do we actually realise how good Ndidi is? Because obviously, when we had Kante, it was almost a similar situation. Like, we didn't actually realise how good he was almost till he left us. So, is it fair to have Ndidi in that same bracket as Kante? Like, is he that same? Well, he's not the same sort of player, like for like, but ultimately, is he in that same category of one of the world's best central defensive midfielders, Ed?
Were you going to say something, Austin?
Oh no, go ahead.
Oh, right, sorry, I thought you were, so I was going to let you speak. But I was quite surprised about the results of this little bit of research that you did.
Yeah, so just Twitter. Before I'll do it, so there was just a little over 500 votes, which is a fair sample size, obviously. So Ndidi did win with 37%. Mendy got 25%, but bridging the gap between them two was rotating them with 31%. So, and then playing both together, which seems unreasonable, had 7%. But nonetheless, so Ndidi came out top, Ed. Mm-hmm. Do you think that is because he is as good as I just sort of made out from Austin's comments?
Yes. I think that everyone, Mendy's done well, don't get me wrong. He's done very well. In fact, in some of the matches, he's been one of, if not the best player in the middle. Well done. However, when I say Ndidi, I don't mean when he comes back, right, first game 90 minutes and he plays 90 minutes every game in every competition going forward unless he's injured. But when he's fit and ready, there's some players which you hold your hand up and you say, I'm sorry, but this guy's better. He's coming in. He's starting. If, say, Vardy gets injured for 5 games, Iheanacho comes in, does great, gets 4 or 5 goals. As soon as Vardy's back and fit, he starts because he's one of the best. He's probably the best striker we've ever had. One of the best in the Prem. There's no debate. When Ndidi is back and ready to go and fit, he plays. He's one of the first names on the team sheet. We saw last year what happened without him.
Well, it's hard to disagree. It's one of those arguments where you can easily argue, well, not easily, but I'd want to sort of argue for and against those points because for me, yes, they are both ball-winning midfielders, but it's Mendy's energy, which indeed he doesn't sort of possess. It's almost what Mendy does off the ball. He's like an absolute whippet. He's sort of everywhere, covering that ground. And obviously, the obvious criticism of that is that necessarily required? Like, what are his tackle statistics, or is he just wasting energy? Whereas, indeed, he's the sort of player who he has these like extendable legs. He can sort of get a tackle from maybe like 3 foot away, which he has no right of winning. But what I'm worried about is that what Mendy has that indeed he doesn't is that sort of energy in the middle of the park, which it doesn't necessarily mean he'll be left wide open, but like I say, he certainly covers a lot more ground. So do you see them as different types of players, Austin, or is it a case that one can easily replace the other and we could just literally balance the games out of 50-50?
I mean, they are different. I mean, obviously they're both holding midfielders and they win the ball a lot. But I mean, I totally agree with your points. It's like it may come down to matchups, and like we may prefer Mendy against one certain team, we may prefer Ndidi against the other certain team. I mean, if that's a problem we're having, I think we're okay. So, I mean, you can't. As of right now, I don't think you can go wrong if both are healthy and both are in top form. So, I mean, it's a good problem to have, but they're definitely.
Yes, I mean, sorry to interrupt you, but it is a good problem to have. I think.
You know what the main difference between the two is? It's that Ndidi is first choice and Mendy is not. That is the end of the debate.
Yeah, but Mendy has earned. And I'm gonna pretend to be Jamie because he sent over some notes before this podcast. And I didn't disregard them. I'm drawing reference to one now, and he
put your reading glasses on then, so you can read it, old man.
So basically, Jamie is a big fan of Mendy and Barnes, as everyone already knows by now. But so I think if Jamie was here on this podcast, he'd be saying it's not as easy to just disregard him like that because he's earned his position. Like you or many other Leicester City fans were quick to say no, he's nowhere even near good enough to be starting. But now he's obviously he's doing a job, isn't he? So who's to say that he can't keep developing, and then we could turn around and say, I don't know, maybe we do miss his energetic presence. I think, but interestingly, what Austin said is that it could work out to be like Ndidi is just better suited to play against a certain type of team, maybe like a counter-attacking team, whereas Mendy sits in against, a different type of side. But it's down to Rodgers, isn't it? This is where
we've got very little say on the matter.
Well, yeah, but ultimately, as a manager, this is what I mean. He needs to make these critical decisions to see how, at the tail end of the season, when hopefully we're playing some big teams in Europe, albeit in the junior European competition, hopefully we'll have a good squad to sort of help us progress there. But other than that, happy days. It's a weird one though, isn't it? Because we're setting a new record. 5 wins from 7 is the best start we've ever had to a Premier League season. But the 2 games we've lost at home to Villa and West Ham. So do we have a right of almost thinking, well, that's a bit annoying, isn't it? We should have a 100% record, or is it a case that at the start of the season, if someone offered us this position, we'd have probably said we'd have lost to maybe Man City and Arsenal, but ultimately we're happy with where we are, Austin. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, I think it's very fair. I mean, you told me at the beginning that we'll have 15 points, and I mean, I think most people would have said what you said. It's like we would have lost against City, lost against Arsenal, but we would have beat Villa and West Ham. I mean, and also don't look past the fact of West Ham and Villa have been very good lately. So I mean, it's not just one game off that we lost to them. So
yeah, but here's my curveball response. Since we've played the 2 teams that we lost to, neither of them have got a win between them.
Well, that is good stats, and that's what we've missed not having you here, Ed. I mean, I don't know how you even. I mean, it's not a hard stat to find, but it's an impressive one.
Villa, who beat us 1-0 at home, have conceded 7 goals in the 2 games after us, having played Leeds and Southampton, who were not the biggest. Fair play, West Ham have had tough matches. They've had Spurs, Man City and Liverpool. So you can't really blame them not for winning any. But, you know, West Ham have won 1 match in the last 5, and it was against us 3-0 at home. So not great. It is weird, though, isn't it? Because you'd say, at the start of the season, Man City would probably lose would definitely lose on paper. Arsenal game, you could have a very good argument about losing or drawing on paper. But the others, you'd expect us to get something. So the fact we actually lost 2 of the easier games this season, it does annoy you, because we could be top of the league now, like 5 points clear.
Yeah, but then it just seems a bit unrealistic.
Then you can start playing the Champions League music.
Yeah, we can't keep banging that drum. But no, I don't know. I think in a perverse sort of way, our biggest test is playing a mid to low table side at home, because typically they're the ones we've struggled against. Let's let a team sit back against us and see how we break them down, because I said it in last week's pod, that is probably our greatest downfall. So maybe the true hallmark of Rodgers and his squad and his man management and his team and his game management is go on, set up against a mid to low table team at home and go and beat them. It seems like the easiest task there is, but it's what we've struggled at, isn't it, Austin? So is it right to say that we almost go into these sorts of games with less confidence than we do if we're playing a top 6 team?
Oh yeah, I mean, the fact that we scored 4 against Burnley, I mean, that by itself was shocking, because, I mean, at best you're thinking maybe 1-0, 2-1, and then we go out and score 4. I mean, and even if you look at our next couple of fixtures, like obviously you got Wolves and you got Liverpool next, but then after that you got Fulham. They're probably going to sit back. Sheffield United, they're going to sit back, and then Brighton after them. You don't know what. I mean, they're not exactly going to go and attack us. So those three games, I think, will really show if we've gotten better at that fact, or maybe we just had a couple lucky games against teams that sit back.
Well, yeah, because on paper, Ed, you're looking
played on paper, though.
Yeah, exactly. You're looking at these games and metaphorically licking your lips, aren't you? So, I mean, is this running as nice as it can get for us as we head into sort of Christmas, or would you almost like to see a traditional top 6 team, maybe someone like Man United now, who are really they're inconsistent at best, just to keep us on our toes, sort of thing, or is this like you look at it and think, no, we've got no excuses not to be beating these teams home and away, so let's get it done running into Christmas?
Well, we learned from last season what can happen when you have back-to-back games and they don't go your way. Was it Liverpool and Man City last year?
Yeah, horrible.
Were we top at before them, or at least we
were second?
We were very much in the mix, and
we were second, but I think 8 points out.
Yeah,
going into those games,
and then it just fell apart, didn't it? So if you actually look at our next 4 games, 2 of them are against Braga, who are the next best team in the our European group. Then we've got Wolves, who are solid, tough to break down. They don't concede many. Then they've got Liverpool, who are obviously an excellent team. This little run here, the next 4 games, probably our biggest challenge. Well, definitely our biggest challenge this season in terms of runs of matches. And if we've not learned from last year about how to pick ourselves up after disappointment, it will be very important to come out of these games still on a high.
Well, you're looking at, to be fair, I disregarded that Liverpool game. I sort of missed it looking at the fixtures, but again, it's away, it's at Anfield, but again, there's no fans there. Whether or not you're an advocate of Liverpool being a tough place to go, plus they're lacking Van Dijk. Arguably a huge loss for them. So
Fabinho.
So I'm saying, in terms of favourable times to play big teams, if we're going to chuck one in there to sort of keep us on our toes, then let's say Liverpool now, because I mean, albeit right now, what are they? They're 5-0 up away at Atlanta as I look at my TV. So they're making light work of that. And a lot of people would have said that's a tricky place to go. So who knows? But we'll preview that closer to the time. But let's now look at the next trip, which is, well, it's not a trip. It's a trip for Braga because they're coming to Leicester. So, Austin, when the draw was made, we didn't really know a lot about any of the teams in our group. But would you say this is probably the toughest little duo of games we have?
Yeah, I mean, these two games, I mean, I think looking at it, that they were probably going to be our hardest matchup. I mean, I know Athens is a little bit experienced and we didn't know anything about Zori, but they look at Braga and like we were looking it up before, they finished in the top four in Portugal in the last couple of years, and they've not only just finished fourth, they've been finishing third above at least one of the big three in Portugal, and they're very experienced in Europe. And I think these next two games will decide who tops the group. And being top of the group means a lot because that means we probably won't. Because that will help us not face a team dropping down from the Champions League, and that will help us not facing a team that wins their group. So these are two very important games that we're going to have back to back against Braga.
Yeah, I mean, you can't disagree with that. So, Ed, I know you've done a bit of research about Braga.
You're absolutely making out like I've done a lot. I Googled where they came in the league.
I'll give you a bit more time in regards to asking you a question, but a lot of our listeners may remember that they were actually in the same group as Wolves last year. And on aggregate, if you like, they came out on top. They beat Wolves at their place 1-0 in what I seem to remember was a horrible game to watch. And then away from home, it was 3-3 in what suggests to be a lot of a nicer spectacle. And then ultimately in the knockout rounds, they got knocked out? Did they get knocked out by Rangers? Is that right?
Yep, 4-2 on aggregate.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's very recent history, and you'd like to think that a team from the SPL, we should be at least be able to match what they do against Braga. And in reality, their team couldn't have changed that much, Ed. So, I mean,
Do you not rate Scottish teams?
I don't think Chris Sutton listens to our podcast. So I think I can confidently say that's if they were to ever play in the Premier League, it'd take them quite a few years and a lot of financial investment to come up to speed. But regardless of that, I'm asking you the impossible. Preview Braga as an opposition. Are they going to be tricky to play against, Ed? Have you watched much of them?
Oh, I'm a season ticket holder. I get the jet ski there every other weekend. Other modes of transport are available.
It's a long way to jet ski, but we'll run with it.
I've got a big engine, tanker. What do I know about Braga? Right. I know that they are one of the better teams in Portugal. They may not be as fashionable as the big three in terms of Porto, Benfica and Lisbon, but they're very much fighting it out with them the last few seasons. Like you've said, they've got some pedigree against English sides. I don't think it's going to be a walkover then. But again, just like every other match that I seem to be saying at the moment, if we perform whatever team we put out, especially at home, we should be winning this. And if we do win it with 3 wins out of 3 in the group stage, we're very almost sort of there, aren't we? We'll be pretty much qualified. We'll be like 1-2 results away from guaranteeing top in the league. So it really would be a good statement to get a comfortable win, or any win for that matter.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Again, it's stereotypical, but you always sort of associate these Portuguese sides, or at least the Portuguese national side, for being technically sound, maybe with a couple of flair players. But I don't know. Like I say, you're previewing impossible. We're ignorant enough to not go and watch hours of Braga football for these
Speak
podcasts.
for yourself, mate.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a jet ski, and I certainly don't have a motor.
You know, they had that Trincao last season, the winger that we were heavily linked with from Barcelona. So don't tell me I've not done my homework.
True, actually, from endless links over the summer. Did he go back to Barcelona then? Is that right? Or?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's playing there now.
Okay, well,
not now, but yeah.
yeah. So we can surmise that they lost one of their key players. I mean, I'm just looking, which makes for great listening on a podcast. I'm looking at their squad and just to see if I can.
I'll tell you what, they have got a player you will have heard of.
Gaitan.
Yeah, I took the words out of my mouth.
But you didn't
Aged.
mean Texera, Lopez, Reis, Gonçalves, Jose, Carlos, did you? He's a number 2, but he's actually a striker.
Well, you get those on the continent, don't you?
But no, it's a Portuguese heavy squad, so then the other one's a Brazilian. Obviously, speak the same language, so it's good for chemistry if you're a FIFA player.
Wolves 2.0.
Yeah, ironic actually. Yeah, that was actually that Wolves Braga game. That would have been very Portuguese last year. But no, let's get on with it and let's make previews. I mean, we're basing this again on absolutely nothing. So Austin, over to you. It's Thursday evening. What's the score going to be?
I mean, you really don't know what you're going to get with us until the lineups come out. But I mean, early prediction, I'm gonna go 3-1. I do think we'll concede at some point. How, I have no clue, but I think 3-1 would be a good result for us. Still scoring goals. Hopefully be more on the front foot. Hopefully it will be a game that's fun to watch, even though of course I won't be able to watch it. But I mean, I think that would be a good result. Get 9 points out of 3 games and take that top spot all by ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. That would be a fantastic result. Whether or not I agree, you'll soon find out. What about you, Ed? Are you in agreement of a?
Do you want first goal scorers as well, or is this not going down on the prediction league?
Well, obviously it will go down, but also I always ask you when the teams come out for the sake of the listeners here. We don't want to be boring them with guessing team lineups, but you can put a first goal scorer in if you want.
11 changes. What?
So who's first of all, are we going to win?
Yeah, we are. Next.
Okay, you can give me a scoreline as well. That'll make it a bit more.
I was going to say 3-1, but I'm a big fan of not giving the same results to make it interesting. Although it is allowed in this game now, apparently. So I'll go 4-1.
That is.
Yeah.
If we beat Braga 4-1 at home, it's not. Look at Braga and think, yeah, they're not a European super, but that for me is a real statement because they don't seem like a team who are beatable 4-1 to me.
Mendy hat trick.
Okay, head's gone, but it might happen. You don't know. We'll take that as a serious prediction. Anyway, for me, I actually think we're going to go 1-0 down in this game, but
Score 4.
No, we'll score 2.
4-1.
I actually do honestly think we will start this game slow,
sluggish,
but come out on top, which will be obviously a big thing for us because typically going behind, we don't have the best record, do we? Especially in the Premier League. So, 2-1 for me, but I do expect them to start well because you look at teams like Zorya and AEK Athens who both started better. So, for me, I'm just following a pattern if we're looking at that. But I do think Braga will bring the biggest test. Not to mention it being difficult when we go out there in a couple of weeks' time. But nonetheless, so that sort of brings us to a conclusion. We can look forward to a Mendy hat trick. So go and put £1 on that at your local bookies because I'm sure you're going to get good odds. But
I'd
otherwise,
say to score 3+ just in case he's on form.
Yeah, I don't know the statistics. I didn't research.
More than 2.5 goals.
I don't think I'm going to side with the fact I don't think he's ever scored more than 2 in a match.
Wow, first time for everything, as you well know. So my other question: have you totted up like the leaderboard on this prediction league whilst I've been away? I'd be interested to know how people are doing.
In all honesty, I've not actually opened the spreadsheet. I've got the predictions on my phone, but whether or not the data's transferred from one to the other, I cannot give you an update. But I think Jamie's probably maybe in the lead because he's He just
He
backs
says Harvey
Barnes.
Barnes every week.
Yeah, so he's got a chance of getting a couple of bonus points there. But no, I'm not going to lie to you, but I do promise that for next podcast, for the one listener who cares.
Well,
which is,
I want to
be
know,
fair.
so I can only imagine all the listeners want to know.
I forgot how irritating you are actually interrupting the closing sequence. But also, I've just looked at the Braga team sheet, and their goalkeeper has the same surname as his first name. So
What's that, Dave?
he's so good they named him twice. It's actually Mateus. So who knows? Brazilian though, so good.
Brazilian keepers. I'll
yeah.
leave that there.
Yeah, I mean Edison is. I think I was looking at a little.
Actually, they've got Edison and Allison, two of the best in the Premier League.
Yeah.
Can we just forget about that comment and just think Brazilian keepers before the last 5 years?
No, there is. You can argue Edison has made one of these. I think he's second most mistakes behind Pickford in the Premier League this season. I think so. So and Pickford's England's number one.
Is he? He's not. Is he even Everton's number one now?
Well, who knows? It's a bit of a strange one.
Are we going to predict the Wolves scores as well?
Oh yeah, that's a good point. I forgot. We're definitely not going to preview it, as there's zero prep gone into that.
If you want to take the leadership role on the podcast seriously, I know I'm not here much, but when I'm here, I like it done properly.
Wolves on Sunday afternoon, so we get 1 day less rest, but we haven't travelled a 4-hour journey the night of the game. So, Ed, are we going to beat Wolves?
4-1. No, it won't be 4-1. It will be a different score this time. I see this being a very tight game. Wolves, I always get the impression whenever I watch them, they're not going to concede many. I also get the impression they're not going to score many either. They're pretty tight. I think we're going to win though, because I always back us to win, which is why my predictions are always off. I will go 1-0, and the goal scorer will be, out of respect for Jamie Thorpe, I'm going to say Harvey Barnes.
That is very respectful.
That's respectful. Hope he likes that.
Yeah.
Hope Big John does as well.
Two of our iconic listeners when he's not on the podcast, of course. And Austin, what about you?
I'm gonna go. What I really want to happen. I mean, obviously, I don't this way, but I would like a 4-3, a little bit of revenge on one of Claude Poole's last games. Remember that crazy game when I believe Wes Morgan tied it up 3-3.
I do remember, yes.
Yeah, that was a terrible game. Yeah, I'm gonna go. I think it will be a goal fest. I mean, like saying that there was a grand total of 0 goals last year. So I mean, I'm gonna go 3-2 us. I think it'll be 3-1. I think they'll nick one late. So and then I'm gonna go. I think I'm gonna go Jamie Vardy, first goal scorer. Can't really go wrong there.
Okay, again, I'm not really feeling anything. I'm very impartial. The last time we played Wolves at home was it not the opening game of?
Yeah, it was the opener last year.
It seems about 17 years ago now.
Was it?
And VAR came to our rescue. I just feel this game, it will be marred with VAR drama. That's my headline. Headline prediction. I'm going to literally predict the same as what I predicted for Leeds. A low scoring, cagey affair. Vardy 90th minute. If I say that every week, it will happen. So 1-0 last minute, and there's no point watching it, guys, because it's going to be a shit game. So yeah, so that's that. So yeah, on that note, I'm going to wrap it up. Ed's not going to interject because he's got nothing.
No, I will. I'll tell you what I was thinking, but I didn't want to say anything to slow it down.
You are slow
for any Office fans there. I was trying to think of a way of fusing together VAR and drama, because they sound like they go together, and you could make a fun word out of it. VA drama, but it doesn't work in practice. So forget about it.
That's what you interrupted. You did slow it down. You took the big inflatable penis and slowed it down.
For non-viewers of the office, won't understand that joke. So
yeah, but that's the point. If anyone, go on,
say it.
The annoying thing is there'll be more people. This is one of my biggest gripes.
You're slowing it down.
Watch the US office without ever giving the UK office, which is, of course, is the founder of the office, a go. So, yeah, but true fans will know that reference, and it's perfectly child friendly. It's just an inflatable toy.
Well, I'm glad that you've lowered the tone of the podcast as kept half the viewing listenership.
Office, do they recreate that scene?
I don't think so. Because it's crass. It's not advertiser friendly.
No, well, of course you get no adverts on the BBC.
You're a sad little man.
All right.
End the podcast. What's your favourite law?
I could just say one thing before we end it. I will say on a slightly happier note, congrats to Chituru Dunze, one of our academy goalies, did get called up to the US squad for the friendlies. So congrats to him.
The first team.
Yep, senior squad. He'll be the third choice keeper, but he did get promoted.
I've never heard of him. United States men's national team.
What's his name?
Chituru Dunze. So CHITURUODUNZE.
Come on, give us a lowdown. I bet you know more than anyone else about him.
He's only about 17, 18, so he's a really young guy.
College football system or how's this?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, I can't fully remember when he came over.
He's from North Carolina. Isn't that where you're from?
I'm from South Carolina, so it's
just south of there.
Just about 500 miles away, but that's fine.
He's a 18-year-old, so he's from he used to play for Vancouver.
As previews go, this is sublime.
Well, I mean, I'm just trying to work this out because Vancouver,
isn't it? Vancouver Whitecaps. Is that their name?
Well, yeah, I understand that's in Canada, but now he's in the American national squad. Ooh, risque, but yeah, 18.
Vancouver are in the MLS, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yep.
18. Good to get into any national squad. Is there any chance of him playing or?
I don't think so. I think he'll be more of a backup. I think if there is a chance of him playing, he'll probably play against Panama, which is our second friendly. I don't think he'll play against Wales. I think that'll be all Zach Steffen.
Yeah, but does this lad even play? He's not in the under 23s, is he? He's
under 18.
No, he'll be in the under 18s. Who hopefully he's not the starting goalkeeper because I have noticed our under 18. I believe just gave up 8 goals in their last game.
Oh wow, that's good.
Well, on the back of that, he deserves to get called up for the US team, surely. I mean, it's an interesting one, but like you say, I didn't hear. I've never heard of him. But congratulations. Maybe he does listen to the podcast.
Do you remember who the last American international was to play for Leicester, Chris? Don't say.
Yeah. But I do because no one else knew who he was.
Yeah, we had this not long
Zach
ago.
Whitbread.
The American keeper.
But notoriously, it would have been Casey Keller, wouldn't it, back in the late 90s, who was an icon. But, okay, so third time lucky. There's surely no more interruptions here as we ramble on, as we often do at the end of these podcasts. But yes, so we've got Braga, Wolves coming up. It should be a good week. Hopefully.
I've got something to add.
That's unreal. This is unreal.
I just read this 18-year-old keeper's 6'7", and I've got to say that's very tall. That's literally all I've got to say.
How tall is a football goal?
He's 2 meters tall. He's like Peter Crouch height, and he's 18.
Yeah, he'll be a little bit shorter than Peter.
That's good height. Good height.
Yeah, Peter Crouch is 2 meters 1 centimeter. It's quite literally similar height, and yeah,
That's quite good, isn't it? Well, I mean, it's very good for the goalkeeper, but imagine his reach from a corner. It's like he's almost reaching 3 meters high. So,
well, according to the US men's national team, his bio on there, his nickname is either C or Big C. So
oh god, right. Well,
now you can end. Now you can end. Everyone's turned off anyway.
Big C, right. Yeah, I mean, yeah, literally. So yeah, that's the end of the podcast, guys. Thanks for listening. Who knows who will be here next week? I'm the ever present. Who I'm joined with is we'll see. Maybe we'll draw it out of a hat. Maybe we'll have a special guest on. Who knows? We don't know. So yeah. Anyway, that's it. Thanks, guys. Bye.